The details of a particular dispute were taught in our text. It said, on the day that Rabbi Eliezer used all the arguments in the world, which is pretty impressive, he produced powerful arguments to justify his position. But the sages, the ancient rabbis, did not accept his arguments. After Rabbi Eliezer saw that he was not able to persuade his colleagues with logical arguments, he decided to try a different approach.
If Jewish law agrees with me, let this carob tree prove it.
The carob tree immediately uprooted itself and moved 100 cubits, and some say 400 cubits, from its original place. And the channel of water immediately flowed backward against the direction in which it usually flowed.
A channel of water cannot prove it either. If Jewish law agrees with me, let the walls of this house of study prove it.
The walls of the house of study then leaned and were about to fall. Rabbi Joshua, one of Rabbi Eliezer's chief opponents among the sages, I like to think that they're enemy rabbis, follow my argument. But Rabbi Joshua rebuked the falling walls, and he said to them,
if rabbinic scholars argue with one another about Jewish law, what business is it of yours?
He says, why do you care, walls? The walls did not fall down out of respect for Rabbi Joshua, nor did they straighten out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer, and indeed, it is said that those walls still remain leaning this day. Suddenly, a heavenly voice went forth and said to the sages,
why are you arguing with Rabbi Eliezer? Jewish law follows his opinion in all circumstances.
What? Rabbi Joshua stood up and quoted a verse of Torah. What did Rabbi Joshua mean when he quoted the verse from the book of Deuteronomy that says, the Torah is not in heaven? Rabbi Jeremy says, you gave the Torah to us, it's ours now. From this verse, after the majority incline, we learn that the arguments about Jewish law must be resolved by majority vote. God cannot contradict that decision that God made. Generations later, however, Rabbi Nathan met the prophet Elijah. And Rabbi Nathan asked Elijah about the debate, this very debate between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Joshua.
God smiled and said, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me.
You all are so good. You're just so good. Hopefully you all could hear. These are some brave individuals with loud voices and a heavenly voice. Where that came from, no one may know. So you may be wondering, why this text? Why would you share this text with us, Rabbi Bess? Thank you. Well, I'll tell you. It's because earlier this week, I actually shared this exact same text with a lovely group of people at a gay and lesbian organization at a Catholic church in Memphis. When I was asked to speak, I was told I could speak about any subject, though they also told me many ministers and clergy have spoken on the connection of LGBT and their faith experience. You can certainly choose that topic, i.e., choose that topic. Or, if you have a topic within your faith that you feel would be enlightening for us, talk about that. So why did I pick this text to share? You'll have to hold on to that just for a moment as we talk about an episode from this week's Torah portion. So in this week's Torah portion, and really the next couple following it, we find the Israelites on the east side of the Jordan River preparing to enter the Promised Land. And a couple things need to happen before they can actually enter the land. First, Moses has to choose a successor, because Moses isn't going into the land, which is a whole nother sermon for a whole nother time. But Moses is still alive at this point, and God reminds him of this. You're not going to go into this land where you've led these people. And God chooses Joshua, one of the 2 spies who had returned from scouting out the land earlier, a few portions ago, at the beginning of this journey. The reaction of the 10 other spies were, oh gosh, don't do this. But Caleb and Joshua said, it's going to be worth it. It's going to pay off. So the second thing that needs to happen before they can do this is a census has to be taken so that they can decide how the land is going to be distributed once they take possession of the land. And there are a group of women, the daughters of a man named Zelophehad. It's pretty good. They find the inheritance laws to be unjust because only men can inherit. And specifically, these 5 women, their father has passed. They have no brothers. They have no husbands. So this idea that only men can inherit really seems unfair. What is most amazing is that God actually hears their argument and changes the law that God previously established. Essentially, God says, you know what? I was wrong. Maybe that would be a little less amazing if you heard that phrase, you know what, I was wrong, from your spouse, maybe. Maybe it would be just as amazing. Or your parent, or your friend, or your child, but this is God. God, who is thought to have written the Torah, who could have made an executive decision to cut out the part where God says, whoops, I was wrong. I misjudged how that decision would impact others. This precedent means that laws, even those established by God, are open to challenge and have potential to change if it is for a righteous cause. Amazing. A contemporary conservative rabbi, Bradley Artson, comments that God revises an earlier piece of divine legislation because of an overriding moral imperative. It's not just for any reason. And he wonders, this rabbi, why hadn't Moses or any of the elders been able to point out this legal injustice on their own? Why couldn't they see that this wasn't fair for every family? What special trait allowed the daughters of Zelophehad to notice an injustice and actually speak out? And one of our medieval commentators, Rashi, explains that the daughters of Zelophehad, their eyes saw what Moses could not see. Rabbi Artson elaborates, saying, our eyes are often like Moses, who couldn't see the injustice of this inheritance law. We get stuck in our routine. We see things the way we've always seen them. We take the attitude of, that's just the way it is. The daughters of Zelophehad teach us the imperative of truly seeing, not only with our eyes, but with our minds and our hearts as well. Reminded of the act of Joshua and Caleb when they returned from scouting out the promised land, they were able to see something that none of the 10 other spies that went with them could see. The Torah shows us by example that the constant struggle to be fully human is really the struggle to see all humans as people, Rabbi Artson says. But we're left asking, how can we open our eyes? How can we be like the daughters of Zelophehad? How can we be like Joshua and Caleb? How can we change our narrative from, that's just the way it's always been. It's fine. It's okay. We had a good time. Changing it from that to, this is what it used to be like. It's better now. It's that idea that led me to share the opening Talmudic text many of us participated in with this group at the Catholic Church. Our tradition does not require us to swallow our tradition whole. On the contrary, it asks us to take an active role in the process of interpreting tradition, just as our ancestors had been doing for centuries, even millennia before. In fact, the very blessing that Jews recite before studying Torah together, which you may do tomorrow morning at 8:45 with Sally Rosenberg, is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. It's that word la'asok, that word that was translated here as engage, that teaches us our role with tradition. The translation in the prayer book, as I said, translates la'asok as engage, but it can also mean to work, or to busy yourself, or to be involved with. Regardless of how it is translated, it is an active verb. We are not commanded simply to read Torah. We are commanded to engage with it, to willingly accept the challenge of reinterpreting our text throughout the generations. As humanity's moral center continues to develop, we're asked to continually challenge our tradition. It reminds us that even if there's an existing precedent in support of your view, doesn't mean you're right. Moral truths run deeper than our personally held beliefs. Morality is not even left up to God according to this Talmudic story or to the daughters of Zelophehad. It is up to us to uncover and discover them. For the group I spoke with at that church, they have been told again and again that it is literally against their religion to love who they love, to be who they are, to be who they were born to be. They have been told that's just the way it is. It's just what the text says. And they've been told not to question the Holy Scripture. And that, it isn't good enough. Our text does not always get the final word. Just as God admits that the inheritance laws in this week's Torah portion were unjust, despite having just laid out these very laws verses before, we sometimes have to admit that there may be other pieces of our lives that require re-examination and reinterpretation. If God can be wrong, then all the more so, can't we? My prayer for us this Shabbat is that we truly engage with our tradition, not to support what we've always believed, but to help us open our eyes to truths. Torah is all of our inheritance here tonight. And my question for you is, what will you do with it? Shabbat Shalom.